I don't think it's very controversial to say that the goal of Christianity, the ultimate, the full goal, the whole goal of Christianity is to fully partake of the blessings that God offers us and to bring others to Christ so that they can share in those same blessings that God offers to us. Have those blessings and get as many people as we can to share those blessings with us. That's what Paul said is one reason why he preaches the gospel everywhere he goes, is because he wants people to share in the blessings of Christ with him. That is the goal of Christianity. Every Christian wants or should want to see others brought to the Lord. There is really no greater joy than to see a friend or a loved one converted to Christ. Jesus told some parables about that very thing. In Luke 15, we call them the lost parables, not because they were lost, but because they were about lost things. Lost coin, lost sheep, lost the prodigal son, the lost son. He said not only, is it a joyful occasion on earth when something lost is found, but in heaven there's rejoicing when even one soul is found or saved. However, it may be that many of us or most of us feel inadequate for the job of bringing others to Christ. We don't feel like we're capable. We don't feel like we're able to do that. Maybe we compare ourselves with other people and feel inadequate, or maybe we just don't feel like we have the skills necessary or the knowledge. There are some people in the Bible that we can look to as examples in soul winning. Paul, the Apostle Paul, was one of the greatest soul winners ever to walk the face of the earth. Apollos was another. We read about men like Philip and Stephen and the other apostles, for that matter. We read about women like Lydia and Priscilla. All these were great examples of soul winning, but there was no greater soul winner in all the world than Jesus. He was the single greatest of all soul winners. He knew man, he knew God, he could relate with both sides. He understood how to reach out to another person and to save that person. And this morning, we'll just take a few minutes to look at some of his methods. Why was Jesus so good at soul winning? It wasn't because he was Jesus. Well, he's Jesus. That's why he's so good at it. And that I can't really learn from that because I'm not Jesus. But practically speaking, what did Jesus do? What was it that made him so good at winning souls? Just a few things for our a few minutes this morning. Number one, he realized that winning others was a team sport. Jesus understood that soul winning is a team sport. John and Jesus, John the Baptizer and Jesus, made a pretty good duo. We don't ever really see them working directly together, but John played a very important role in Jesus' ministry. He pointed others to him. John chapter 1, all this is going to come from John chapter 1, by the way, verses 35 through 51. John pointed the way to Christ, and Jesus picked up where his ministry ended, and he took it from there. He finished the process of conversion in the big picture, I guess, and on a smaller scale individually. And it needs to be that way with us as well. We need to take our own role and responsibility. Soul winning is the job of parents. It's the job of Bible school teachers. It's the job of our friends and companions, co-workers and classmates. Wherever you are, that's what your ultimate aim should be with the people you come in contact with. It's a team sport. We have to all work together. And that's not to say that, I don't have a teammate, so I can't be expected to do any soul winning. One of the interesting things about the way Jesus taught was that anytime he gave an instruction about you and another person, he always put the focus on you, no matter what. He never left any room for somebody to say, well, Jesus said the other person is supposed to do this, and he's not doing that, and therefore there's nothing for me to do. Even when in terms of sin, he said, if your brother sins against you, go to him and tell him his fault. But what about if I sin against my brother? Somebody might say, well, Jesus told him to come to me. If he doesn't come to me, that's his problem. No, Jesus said if you are at the altar, if you're going to go worship, we would say, and you realize your brother sinned against you, or you realize that your brother has something against you, leave your gift at the altar and go to your brother. So whether your brother sins against you or you sin against your brother, you go. And it's no different with soul winning. Yes, it's a team sport, but what if I don't have a partner? What if I don't have a teammate? Well, you can still do something. You could be somebody else's partner. You take the initiative. You be somebody to help another person, help another brother or sister, rather than using that as an excuse not to do something. Jesus knew that it was a team sport. We all have a part. The church being called the body of Christ is not just another word for a group of people. The body, that analogy is very instructive and insightful in itself. Each part of our body has its own role, and it does something different than every other part. And Paul said that's exactly how the church is, the body of Christ. The fingers don't do what the eyes do. The feet don't do what the hands do, and so on and so forth. The nose doesn't do what the ears do. Can't do what the ears do. But when it all works together, the body can function properly. Every single part must work together in its own way, in its own role and purpose. And if teamwork doesn't exist, then Christianity is crippled. Just like any team sport. Where the teamwork, a team of highly skilled players that don't work together is going to lose against a team of mediocre skill that does work together. Almost every time in a team sport. Christianity is not that much different. We all have to work together. We don't have to be the best in every category or even in one category, but if we all work together, we can win souls. We don't need to expect one person to go and do all these things. There are people that you are around every day that I'm not around, that I don't even know. And I come in contact maybe with people that you don't know. And somebody else comes in contact. When we depart from this place, we all go to different spheres of influence. And that's when our role begins. That's when it starts. It starts here. It's continued out there. Everybody working together. But we also have to work together here. If I'm not a team player here, I'm not going to be able to be a team player out there. Jesus realized that winning souls was a team sport. The Great Commission depends on cooperation between Christians. Absolutely depends on it. God depends on us. Some people sometimes have an issue with that concept. God doesn't depend on us. He doesn't need us. Well, He told us to go out and spread the gospel, preach the gospel. He told us to do that. He needs us to do that. He depends on us to do that in His system, in His plan. And we can do that. We can do that. We can be a soul winner like Jesus was. But we have to realize that it's a team sport. Number 2, Jesus took time for people. Such a simple concept. Taking time, and yet so difficult. We are slaves to the clock so many times. We may always be aware of what time it is. That's why we have these things. I feel naked if I don't have this on. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I'm used to it being there, but I also like to look at it. This is what time it is. Why is that? Isn't that a strange thing? What time is it? How much time have I spent doing this? How much time do I have until this thing? Time. We are all about time. And too many times, we don't have any time. I don't have time. we rarely see Jesus. Now, Jesus was a man who literally, he didn't have any time. The way we use it, maybe I shouldn't say literally, but the way we use that, he actually did not have time. There were people coming to him constantly. He didn't even have time to eat. He couldn't rest, he couldn't relax, he couldn't, recharge. And yet, we still see him taking time for people. He took time for them. He invested in them. When Andrew and the other disciple that we believe was John came to him, and he turned around and said, "What do you seek? What do you want?" And they told him, "Where are you staying?" It seems they wanted time with Jesus. They wanted his time. At least that's what they got, because Jesus gave it to them. They probably had a nice conversation. I don't think that as soon as Andrew saw where Jesus was staying, he took off and ran to Peter. I think they probably had a conversation with Jesus. They talked with him. It says they spent that day with him. He gave them his time. He could have been doing a million other things. But he gave them time. He took time for people. He invited them. Spent time listening. Spent time teaching them. We have to learn that many people need time. Not just time in the sense of, well, just give them time and they'll come around, but give them our time. Invest in them. Personal attention. That's what shows people that you care about them. It really is. If you really get right down to it, what is a friend? What does that mean? It's somebody who cares about me, thinks about me, spends time with me, wants to spend time with me. That is really what separates a friend from, an acquaintance or a stranger for that matter. Jesus took time for people, with people. And whenever Andrew and John left, they were fully convinced that their immediate job was to go and get somebody else to come to Jesus. And that's what they did. At least Andrew, we read, he went straight to his brother. Said, "Hey, we found him." And then, "Come, let me show you." We see that's what Philip did too, and it's believed that's what John did as well. Take time for people. Jesus took time for people, and it really made a difference in his effort to win souls. He cared about people. Wasn't too busy. And even if he was too busy, he cared more about them. And he invested in them. He took time for people. Number 3, Jesus was such a great soul winner because he sought out good prospects. And he developed them further, pursued them and developed them. He sought out good prospects. That's a lot of work. Going back to our, a team sport analogy, that is a specific job right there that teams have many times, or all the time, is scouts. They're scouting out. They want to find prospects. Jesus did that spiritually. He sought out good prospects, which takes time and energy, because you have to determine and discern who are the good prospects. And then you have to pursue them. You have to help them come along, develop them. All of that takes a tremendous amount of time and effort and energy. Jesus did that for people. We sometimes have people who come to us. That's the exception rather than the rule. An opportunity falls right in your lap. Somebody just appears out of thin air almost, wanting to talk about the Bible or God or Jesus. That's a blessing. That's a gift. Like, thank you. I wasn't even expecting this. Most of the time, we have to look for people to save. And that's what Jesus said. Son of Man has come to seek and save the lost. Seek and to save the lost. We have to look for them. We're told in John 1:43 that Jesus, whereas Andrew and John followed Jesus, Jesus found Philip. What does that word mean? Well, it probably doesn't mean that he went looking for Philip, The word in this context probably means that he came upon it accidentally, on the way. But there's still significance to that concept. He found Philip, he saw him, and he told him, "Follow me." Philip didn't just appear to him. He called Philip. Sometimes people come to you. Most of the time, you got to go to people. That's why Jesus said, "Go and preach the gospel." Don't go and tell people to come somewhere else to hear the gospel. Go and preach the gospel. That's what people need. We have to look for them, seek out souls to save. And whenever we see potential, we have to invest more time. There's potential there. I need to keep going. I need to keep trying. Some people may reject it outright, and it doesn't mean you have to write them off forever. But you don't want to keep spending all your time trying to convince somebody who is not cooperating. Then look at all these prospects that you're neglecting. The very next person you speak to may be ready to accept the gospel, and yet you keep trying to convince somebody else. Jesus never did that, by the way. People didn't want it. He was okay with that as far as it goes. He kept teaching the truth and moving on. If he ran into that person again and the conversation presented itself, he wouldn't run away from it, but he didn't waste his time on that. He went out seeking the lost and especially good prospects. And when he found them, he stuck with them. He kept working. He was patient, but seeking is the main key there. If we're going to be like Jesus in soul winning, we got to put forth the effort to find people who are lost. Find people who need the gospel, who need to come to Christ. And let's be honest, we don't have to look very far or long. They're everywhere. They may even be in the mirror or in our household. But there are also people outside these doors, outside our doors, that need the gospel. Those are the people that we need to seek and to try and save. We need to develop friendships and relationships. That's what we're talking about. Developing relationships with people that will help us ultimately to lead them to the Lord. That should be the end goal of all of our relationships. I want to invest in this person, to develop a relationship with them, because I'm working towards leading them to Christ and saving them. Jesus did that. And that is one reason why he was such an incredible soul winner. Finally, number 4, Jesus always emphasized the good he saw in others. Always, maybe a stretch, but whenever there was good, whenever good reared its pretty face, he would emphasize that. Even if there was some bad in there, rather than focusing on the bad, he would emphasize the good. Compliment the good that he saw in others. Nathanael may be a good example of that. Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile. I got a feeling there were probably some things that the Lord could have called out about Nathanael if he really wanted to. He at least shared in the unjust stereotype of people from Nazareth, at the very least. He prejudged Jesus because he was of Nazareth. He could have focused on that when he met Nathanael. Hey, Nathanael, I heard you've been talking about me because I'm from Nazareth. Can't wait to prove you wrong. But no, he didn't say that. He focused on something good. Or at least, even depending on the interpretation, he even sort of put a positive tilt on something that could easily be taken as a less than worthy trait. His bluntness, maybe. But he gave a compliment. Paul did this as well. Focused on a good thing instead of a negative thing. to try to encourage people. If you point out something good, it encourages them to maybe do that more, to nurture that thing, that aspect of their character or their being. And that's certainly what ended up happening with those that were with Jesus. He brought out the best in them. He complimented and emphasized good, focused on the good. Now, we're not talking about flattery. Flattery is something different. Flattery is empty, meaningless, vain. You just say it. It may not even be true, but you say it just usually for a selfish reason. Either I don't want to get into an awkward conversation, or I don't want this person to not like me, so I'm just going to say it, even though it's not true. We're talking about truth. It is true, but it's a good trait, even though there could be bad traits. You don't want to just walk up to a person you've never met and immediately start telling them about all their faults. That's not going to go very far. Now, it is true, they do need to be told about their faults. But you don't have to do it like that. There are different ways to do that. Jesus emphasized good in others, focused on the good rather than the bad. We need to get to know people. You can't emphasize the good in others if you don't even know them, because then you won't know the good in them. We need to get to know people so that we can offer compliments that are accurate, just like Jesus did, just like Paul did. We have to get to know people. If we don't know people, we won't know them. They won't know us. So that may be the first step, getting to know them and emphasizing the good. Find the good. You have to find the good and then focus on that good. Peter, we get on Peter's case a lot. He had some less than virtuous habits. But he also had some very honorable traits and characteristics as well. Jesus brought out those in him and helped him to overcome his weaknesses. His strengths were made to overcome his weaknesses. Not completely. He was still human. But as a rule, the exception became the rule, and the rule became the exception. In large part, thanks to Jesus and Jesus' investment in him. He was encouraged, the door was opened, and souls were won, even because of something as small, seemingly small as this. Who do you plan to win to God this year? Have you even thought about it? Do you have a list of prospects? Maybe not a literal list, but at least up here, a list of prospects. Is there any one person in your life with whom you regularly have some sort of contact, either in a spiritual or scriptural context, or simply moving with an eye on arriving at the scriptural context? Do you have any scriptural engagement with anybody in your life? Spiritual context. Or are you moving towards that? If not, you can start moving. Maybe you need to start. Or maybe if it's not ready with this person, maybe there's this other person that you are closer to getting there with. The point is, we have to have that somewhere down the line as our goal. This is what we're trying to get towards. We don't need to put it off forever, because Jesus might return before we ever do that. And then we'll be in that horrifying position of, you never mentioned him. Why didn't you mention him? Now it's too late. Never make the mistake of assuming that somebody's going to reject the gospel, because we don't know. They might, and they might not. But the only way for us to know for sure is if we try. if we try to reach them with the gospel, with the truth, the people in our lives, they are the people. That's our focus. That's our purpose. That is what Christianity is all about. If I'm not doing that, then what am I doing? I'm not partaking in Christianity. And if I'm not partaking in Christianity, am I even a Christian? These are powerful questions to ask ourselves as we reflect and meditate on our own lives. Who are you going to try to reach this year, even if just one person? This year, I know you have somebody in your life that needs the truth in one way or another. It may be that we have really struggled with this, and maybe even more so of late. Recently, the world has been turned upside down in a way the last couple of years. Well, it can start getting back when we start getting back. The gospel is not something that's worth putting off for any global circumstance. It's still the most important thing in the world. And it's still the most important thing that the world needs. And it's still the most important thing that God expects us to be giving to people. Wherever we go, wherever we are, our spheres of influence, our respective spheres of influence, that's our goal. Jesus did that. Let's take his example. Let's try to save souls. Do whatever we can. If we don't feel adequate, do what James said to do. Pray. Pray that God will help you. He will. We don't know how he will, but he will. He's not going to zap you with knowledge directly, miraculously, anything like that, but he can help, and he will help. If it's something that he wants us to be doing, he'll help us do it. Ask, fully believing that he will help. He's already helped you by giving you his word. That's what we need to be giving to people. That's what God's given us. So there's your starting point. At least your second starting point, prayer being your first. Maybe you are in a position where you've neglected that. You can make it right. If you've never even tried, you can make it. Everybody can make it right. All the time, anytime. As long as we're here. If you need to do that, we encourage you to do that. We're here for one another as well as for God. And it is it's a team sport.